Hey everybody, glad to have you here. Today I'm talking about this brand new palette from Too Faced. It is the Too Faced Peanut Butter and Honey palette. And I snagged mine as one of those like Platinum Perk early offer type deals on Ulta's website. Got the notification that this was in and you could get it a little bit early. So I've been playing around with it. And they say this is a limited edition palette, $36. And I kind of think of it as the sequel to the Peanut Butter and Jelly palette, which I was a big fan of Peanut Butter and Jelly, frankly. I really enjoyed all the warm kind of orangey browns in here paired with the plums. I thought it made for some kind of unique looks. Over here with the Honey palette, as you can see, you're still getting a lot of warm brownish tones, but it stays in more of a neutral place. You're not pulling in the plums or the fun kind of purpley shades. You are getting an interesting yellow color, and what kind of ties these palettes together is the color called Peanut Butter. It's this matte shade right here, a very matte warm brown, and that shade got started in the Too Faced Chocolate Bar Semi-Sweet palette, I believe. There are some things that I like about this Peanut Butter and Honey palette, some things I don't like so much about it as well. First off, the packaging is adorable. It's got this kind of honeycomb design around the outside, really looks cute beside, you know, the Peanut Butter and Jelly palette. You got the little bee, the cute little face on there. It's definitely adorable. Too Faced majors in cuteness, and they do a good job with it. As far as shade selection, a lot of the palette is taken up with light colors over here. They always do this. This is kind of their general format with their smaller 9-color palettes, is that they have, you know, these larger chunks over here. And they're usually the lightest shades, but there tends to be, I think, a little more separation of color, a little bit more difference in the colors. For example, here in the Peanut Butter and Jelly palette, one is clearly peachy, one is like a gold, and then one is a matte cream color. Over here, everything, while the shades are slightly different, the one up here has a little bit of sparkle, this one is a very soft pink, and this is your light creamy color. They do come off very similarly, and I wish there was more difference between those shades because it does take up, as I said, a lot of the palette. This shade up top here has a little bit of kind of faint sparkle to it. It's not a really like chunky metallic type shade by any means, but you can look really closely at it and see some sparkle. Bee's Knees over here, this color has some shimmer to it, kind of a golden sparkle, and then Going Nuts is kind of like a deep, little bit metallic brown. And then everything else in here is matte. Going right down the middle here, I like how you've got 3 distinct kind of, I don't know, statement mid-tone matte shades. You've got Peanut Butter, Honey Brittle, and Honey Buns. Honey Brittle and Honey Buns, I kind of find myself wishing those shades stood out just a little more on the eyes, and in the swatches you can tell they're just a little more faint than I was expecting. And Too Faced, typically, I feel like their matte formula is just amazing. You know, like it's really buttery and smooth, very creamy, and nice to work with on the eyes. And I feel like whenever I get a new Too Faced palette, whether it's something, you know, special like this throughout the year or their holiday palettes, I go back to my natural matte palette and I feel this texture because this really is, I think, some of the best that Too Faced has to offer. And oftentimes in their other palettes, I'll feel like, yes, you know, like in the Chocolate Bar palettes, certain matte shades, I'll feel them and I'll think, yeah, that's the kind of feel that I remember from natural matte. It's really smooth. There's a richness, kind of a thickness to the product. It goes on so well on the eyes and it blends well on the eyes. And I feel like some of the matte shades in the Too Faced Peanut Butter and Honey palette just weren't quite so rich, you know, as these. There's a little more sheerness in the application with some of those colors. However, I do think this Bee's Knees shade over here, this really pops, and this can make a big difference in your looks, you know, when you're just going with maybe some softer browns and then you pop that kind of rusty terracotta shade on there. It really does have an impact. So I like that color. I think it's really nice and bold. This color called Going Nuts, it kind of makes me go nuts on some of the looks that I've done because I've yet to be really satisfied with that shade. And you might think, well, what's the big deal with it? It's just kind of a dark shimmery brown, but it is the darkest shade in this palette, and you're going to find yourself relying on that shade if you're confining yourself to using only this palette. You're going to rely on that shade to create your contrast, and the little bit of shimmer that it has, I struggle to get it looking really even, and I felt that way even about this look. I used it, you know, on the outside part of my lid, and I used it the other day as well, and I thought it's just not looking super even. It's not really anchoring the look in a really solid, like clean looking way like just a matte shade would. I kind of wish that their darkest shade in this palette would have been matte. I mentioned liking Bee's Bee's Knees. Another shade that I really do like in here is the color called Feelin' Nutty. It's a really nice brown. You can see it's kind of different from peanut butter. It's really like the exact color of my coffee, and I found that to be a really pretty shade to use in blending things out. Looks pretty on the lower lash line, and I feel like that shade and peanut butter, those are a couple of mattes in here that have a really nice smooth texture. And then Honey Brittle and Honey Buns, I mean, maybe they're just like a little bit brighter in color, so I was expecting more from them, but they just seem a little more sheer than I was anticipating. Before I get into like kind of my overall bottom line on this palette and some comparisons as well, I do want to jump to the tutorial and show you how I applied this stuff. So I used a primer all over my lids first, which I would always advise with any eyeshadow, and then I went straight to the crease with the color called Honey Brittle. Really tried to diffuse that color quite a bit, so as I went along with the look I could blend some other things in with it. And then I used Bee's Knees, and that color, like I said, it pops, and that adds a lot of reddish toned intensity to the look. And then I brought in Honey Buns, the yellow color, just very lightly kind of around the edge of the look to do a little something different. And then I used Queen Bee right up under the brow, and so now we've established this whole like soft kind of matte crease situation. Then with a flat brush I took the shade called Going Nuts, and I patted that on the outer part of my lid and just gradually worked that inward. And I'm not saying this shade is like impossible to blend or anything, but it just seems to have a little bit more of a patchy appearance than I'd like. And then I went to Creamed Honey, and I used that on like the inner third of my eyelid. Then on the lower lash line I used Going Nuts, the deepest shade, on the outer part, and I brought in Feelin' Nutty to kind of blend everything and soften that up all the way in. As for the remainder of the look, I used a nude liner on my lower inner rim. I did black liquid liner across the upper lash line, winged it out, applied mascara top and bottom, some false lashes as well, and I do think it's a pretty finished look. Like, I look at this in the mirror, I think, yeah, I like the little addition of the yellow, the warm browns are really pretty, but then I end on this thought of uniqueness. And I know not everybody has all the same palettes in their stash that I might have, but me personally, I feel like the makeup world is running rampant with warm palettes these days. There's a lot of these kinds of tones floating around in so many other palettes. And if you've already got the Peanut Butter and Jelly palette, I thought they did, like I said earlier, a better job with these lighter shades and giving you some different things, not feeling like you just had all one light tone color over there. And you're getting all the warmth, but you're getting some fun purples as well. And something about that purple and warm brown combo I thought looked awesome from this palette. Here you're getting some warm browns and not maybe quite as much fun different stuff to mix it up. That's just my opinion. And then I also think of the Natural Matte palette, and I look here and think, if you're really just into mattes and maybe even the reddish shade that I worked into this look, you think, yeah, I might not reach for that a whole lot. You've got this bottom row here that actually gives you this Honey Butter shade, not comparing it directly to the yellow because obviously that one's yellow, this one's kind of like a yellowish tan, but there's this warmish brown down here as well. And if mattes are your thing, this palette is impeccable quality, and it gives you a little bit of that warm brown feel with this bottom row. And then gotta mention the palette that I just purchased. I know it's more than double the cost of this Too Faced palette, but my Visart Warm Mattes, I mean, they're totally going there with the orange, with the yellow, but the intensity with this is so much more. If you are liking what you see here and you're thinking, gosh, I wish that was just stepped up quality wise and I love my mattes, this thing really takes you there with all the warmth, several tones of brown, the really deep kind of cranberry reddish color, a brighter reddish orange, and then the yellow. And this, my friends, is a real true like opaque yellow. So if that's what you like, maybe it would be worth it to you to spend the extra on a Visart palette, because there's more consistency there, there's more boldness, pigmentation with the color than there is throughout this Too Faced palette. Not that I dislike this palette, and I think to a lot of people this might be something a Too Faced collector would like to have. The cuteness factor, like I said, is totally there, and it is wearable, and I can get some good looks out of it. How many different looks? I don't feel like there's a ton of variety in here, and like I said, there are a few shades that are lacking a little bit from what I expected, and there's so much lightness happening here over on the left. So to me, this palette I think definitely goes more into the want category category than the need category. And by wanting it, I mean I'm wanting to have it because I pretty much collect Too Faced palettes and I think it's adorable, and I do think I can get a few good looks out of it. I certainly don't think it's going to become one of my most reached for items. I don't think it's very unique. There are other palettes even beyond what I've mentioned in this video that can give you these kinds of looks. I can't believe I haven't mentioned this yet, but it does have a scent to it. Too Faced loves to scent their products. They claim that it smells like peanut butter and honey. My nose is still a little stopped up, but I definitely am getting that kind of a scent, you know? I don't know if I'd be able to put my finger on it if somebody didn't tell me it was peanut butter and honey, you know? But there is kind of this warm sweetness happening there, and I do like that. So let me know what you guys think. Have you tried this yet? What do you think of it? Is it something you're planning to pick up? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments section, and I hope this review was helpful. So I'll see you guys soon. Bye. Okay, I'm getting in a bad habit of signing off for the video and then realizing right after that I have more things I want to share. I wanted to share what was on my cheeks and lips for this. I'm wearing this blush from the Balm called Balm Springs. It's a pretty matte blush, kind of like a deep peach, a deep salmon-y color. My highlight on top of that is this new one from Milani in 01 Sunlight. I just kind of dusted across all these shades and put that sort of right on top of my blush and concentrated a little bit of the lightest part of it right on top of the cheekbones. And then the honey palette brought up this chocolate honey thing in my mind from Too Faced, the melted chocolate. So that is the shade that I've got on my lips. That's all for real now, guys. Thank you again, and I'll see you later.